Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast brought to you by Twisted Tea and MyBookie. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter, and I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What's up, you old Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, doing good, man. We've got, we don't have a lot of games, but what we do have, we have a couple highlights here. We got coach comments.
Yeah.
We got a little coaching updates for Mississippi State. And we got one outstanding interview. Karels from GigEm 247 talked to Texas A&M job. This is going to be one heck of a show. You know what?
It is. It is absolutely loaded. It's going to, and again, we do have a lot of games, just not a lot of marquee games, but you never know, Mike. You just never know what's going to happen in these matchups. And we've been pushing that upset narrative for so long that we've almost think that it's not going to happen. But buddy,
I've given up on it.
He's given up on it. Well, maybe we'll use it next weekend when it's rivalry weekend. But dude, I still think there's going to be some great games Saturday. We're going to be at one of those Tennessee-Georgia matchups. So, and that spread keeps moving around. I don't know. It's kind of like, what's Vegas know that I don't, you know?
What has the? I haven't even been paying attention.
It's down to 10 now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What do they know?
I'm just saying. That's 2 scores. I like that, you know? That's not what people are expecting is what I'm saying. So,
I got you.
You know, it sounds like it possibly, I mean, because Vegas is never wrong, could be a hell of a game. So, I'm looking forward to it, brother. And we got some great action in this interview that's coming up. Fantastic. I'm getting flight tracker information from everything out of Oregon. We're keeping up with a lot of those guys there at Mississippi State. So it's always good to kind of have a little bit of an inside look into it.
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head, Shane. It's coaching season. So let's start. Again, we'll go into that with Carter on A&M in a minute. But Mississippi State, I don't know if you saw these comments, Shane. I'm about to play them via Sirius XM radio. But Dan Mullen, of course, now ESPN analyst. A lot of people wondering, could he return to Mississippi State? He was asked that directly. And you never know. I mean, these coaches, they say one thing, they do another. But it's pretty interesting, Shane.
It's always a great honor when your name gets mentioned with stuff. And I know the people of Mississippi are so special and hold a special place in my heart. So, that's, as I always say, you never say never when those things go on. And I've had a lot of people, I haven't spoken to anybody administratively with Mississippi State. I've talked to all kinds of the fans and friends and people that we love in Mississippi say, please, are you, or like as you see all over the place. But, you never say never going back, but I don't know if this is the time.
It's kind of like yes and no. How interesting, Shane.
Very interesting.
So is he interested? Is he not? I don't know, but I think he's kind of. To me, this kind of says he may be interested in coaching again, but I don't think Mississippi State.
Yeah, obviously Dan is going to get back into it, and nothing against his TV time. I think he's doing a good job there, but football needs him. And I think he finds his way back onto the field here. And it may not be with Mississippi State, but why slam that door shut when you can close it slowly,
Right.
So I think.
And one thing to think, Shane, I always hear these coaches when they get up there and they're out of the game. Yeah, TV's nice. He's getting paid. He's on ESPN. I'm sure that's a great gig. No pressure. I have no idea what he's making, but I'm sure he's. When I was at NFL, Shane, remember Maurice Jones-Drew, former running back, and then he got on. He was not the name, I don't think, that Dan Mullen is.
Yeah.
Of course, it was different, but he got hired on, and this was 10 years ago. Starting salary. Take a ballpark guess. This is 100% true.
I have no idea.
You wouldn't even take a guess what they pay one of these analysts? And keep in mind, brand new, no experience. Of course, he was good, but...
on TV?
Yes, sir. On NFL, I saw his contract.
I don't know, 100,000?
400,000. And again, so they're probably paying some of the bigger name people even more. You know what I mean? So I just throw that out there because I have no idea, but I have to imagine Dan Mullen's making at least that. I would have to think.
But again, it's grueling, you know? I mean, just even doing a podcast, you know, it's like, it's nonstop. There's never, you can't take time off, you know? And I'm not saying that, I mean, that was the rumor. He took a few times off during recruiting, you know, so that maybe that's what he didn't want to do. But again, I think it's just a different animal, and, you know, it's just staying on air and always, I don't know. A lot of these coaches don't like getting on the mic, you know, so they don't stay on there long if they want to get back into the coaching world.
That's right where I was going to go, because that's what I was thinking. He's probably making bank. He's no pressure free, but if the longer you stay away, the harder it is to get that job. Yeah, you're removed from glory years at Mississippi State. When he got to Florida, he was sensational. Right. I mean, immediately they turned him around. Yeah, and they were winners the whole time till the very end. So
and ADs, again, you don't want to, like I said, slam the door on somebody, because what's his name? Zach. What's the
Arnett?
AD? No, the AD.
Zach Selman.
Selman. You know, he's a young cat, very energetic, and who knows, this may not be his last stop. You know, he may somewhere else, and then all of a sudden there's something Dan needs, and, you know, he remembers this conversation that we had. So it's a small fraternity, these ADs and coaches and stuff like that. So you got to be careful how you handle it, but you also got to be careful how you handling it on TV. And one thing Dan's getting better at is handling it on TV.
Well, speaking of Zach Selman, Shane, you know who one of his best friends is?
Yeah, Shane Beamer.
Shane Beamer asked about the Mississippi State job. Here's what he had to say.
Shane, it's that time of the year. Your names come up at Mississippi State because of your past career there and your family connection there in Starkville. Any comment on that? And now it seems like schools are dismissing coaches because of that important December signing day to kind of shore things up. Is that a good trend for this game these days?
As a acting coach that wants to not get fired, no, it's not a good trend, particularly during the season. So, no, I don't like that trend. I hate to see it for Jimbo. I hate to see it for Zach. And you realize that's part of it when you get into the profession. But I also understand. I mean, I know I got hired 2 years ago, and it was crazy because I got hired, whatever it was, the second week of December. And it's a week or 10 days before signing day. And you got the portal and everything else you're dealing with. And when a school makes a change, you automatically see it's like sharks in the water with transfers and things like that as well. So I get it, part of it. And then as far as Mississippi State, I understand the connection. Wife is from Starkville, Mississippi State grad. I spent 3 years there, not to mention that Zach, their athletic director, is one of my best friends in the entire world. In fact, the night before I interviewed for this job, we spent Thanksgiving with he and his family, and he and I talk regularly and got a ton of respect for him, and he's doing an awesome job in Starkville. But no, this is where I want to be and love Columbia and want to be here for a long time. And said when I got hired that this was my dream job, and still feel that way. And in my mind, we're just getting started here.
All right, so I'm just saying, Shane Beamer, all these connections. But no, I mean, it's denial season.
Yeah.
Can't take anything these guys say seriously. He could be the Mississippi State coach 2 weeks from now. Yeah. And we'll be running this clip back. But he did deny it pretty strong here, I thought.
He did. But, you know, money talks and bullshit walks. You know? It's like we were always wondering if maybe because that was one of the names that popped out quickly, if it was maybe an opportunity for them to, you know, strengthen his contract at South Carolina. But again, I'm not ruling it out, because who knows how these next 2 weeks play out, and, you know, the conversations. I mean, they have damn Thanksgiving dinner together, you know, so there may be some backdoor shenanigans going on here. So I don't know. I'm not ruling it out completely, but I think Beamer's where he needs to be right now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of backdoor shenanigans, Shane, that's what Tennessee's going to need to beat Georgia, I feel like. So let's talk about this game. We got comments from Kirby and Josh Heupel, but let's start with Kirby, which sounds like, you know, I've not heard Kirby talk like this in a while. Just huge win over Ole Miss. Yeah. People like you and I thought that'd be a competitive game. They win it by damn near 40 points. number one in the playoff. They're feeling themselves. Lack of focus down there in Athens. Uh-oh.
Kirby, when a team's coming off not their best outing like Tennessee last week, is it harder to get the attention of your guys to show them the challenge that it might be given? Like last year, they came in here as the number one team in the rankings.
It was today, but I don't know if it was because of that. I don't know what it was because of. They must be feeling themselves a little bit. I'm a little disappointed. I don't think it has anything to do with Tennessee. I think it's just disappointing practice. We've had about 5 really good Tuesdays in a row, and they were not good today.
You talked a good bit yesterday about Tennessee's run game, and they're one of the most explosive in the country statistically. What is it about the run game that allows them to be so explosive?
Well, it's the backs. It's the commitment to the run. It's the spacing of the receivers. They're not playing in a phone booth. They're playing in a big farm field. I mean, they got everybody spread out, so when a run spits, it's going to go for a long way before somebody else gets to it. So your ability to tackle and fit runs is exposed at a 3 times the level. And they almost always have a good box count, meaning they got a hat on a hat, and they're at an advantage. A man has to whip another man to be able to stop the run against them, and sometimes you don't do that.
All right, Chase, so maybe this is why the line keeps jumping back and forth. Comments like this: Tennessee, your pride is hurt. Elite home field advantage. What have they won, like 10 games in a row, something like that at home? Of course, Georgia's won a lot more just in general. But I don't know. When you hear comments like this from Kirby, does it give you that hope?
Of course it does, Mike. After I heard these, I put out the infamous tweet. How bad do you think Tennessee's going to win? So, no, I'm right there with you on this one. Kirby, he knows how to motivate this team, and clearly he is not liking the effort he's seeing with his boys, because he made a point to say, hey, last few weeks, 7 weeks, it's been great on Tuesday, but this Tuesday practice totally different. So, he knows what he's walking into. Knoxville's, forget the records and all that stuff. It's a tough place to play, like you said. They got the streak now of home wins. So I'm not penciling it in like a cupcake game like everybody else wants to do, because you just never know, man. Anything can happen any given Saturday. So, and Kirby has been on the receiving end of coming into Neyland thinking he was going to win and walking away with a defeat. So it's not his first rodeo. And one thing about this game, it's like the pressure's off Tennessee.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. I don't think he's ever lost in Neyland Stadium
as a player.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, for sure.
No, but what I'm saying on that end is the pressure's off Tennessee. The pressure was on, like, we got to win this. We can't. Georgia needs to lose to Ole Miss. There's a chance. It's like, now it doesn't matter. The pressure's off. So maybe we don't see the conservative play calling we've been seeing and kind of criticizing here. And then same thing with Georgia. They lose, they're still going. They're still going to a college football playoff. They're still going to an SEC championship. This is not a must win. So how does that impact this football game? Because clearly Kirby thinks it's impacting his players.
Do you think Tennessee's got anything to prove in this game? Because the way the last one ended, it was kind of pathetic, I thought. Maybe that's too strong a word, but just lack of focus, lack of effort, something Heupel kind of even noted here in the press conference.
You said post-game that you were disappointed with the way that the team finished.
Yep.
When you watched it on tape, what did you see? And what did you mean in terms of that? Was that one specific drive, or was it just the whole quarter? What was it?
The last couple of drives, going back and watching it, a lot of them did continue to play hard. I just didn't think we played very smart at the end of it. So I was disappointed.
It's a massive opportunity. You can change the narrative. This is the weekend they have circled for the recruiting camp. Yeah. They got all these recruits coming in. Suddenly, I know we offend Georgia when we even suggest it could be a competitive ball game. But, this is a better win than beating Alabama last year. If you can beat two-time national champion, undefeated, hadn't lost in damn near 3 years.
Alabama last year, we said there's a shot, Nobody's saying that this week, and I think that's, except for me, maybe some other idiot ball fans out there, that think that there's an outside shot. But you want to talk about just it's not so much about this team last year and this year. I think this is more about this locker room for the Tennessee Vols, that they want to prove to everybody that they didn't take a massive step back, and that this isn't a class that people criticize for the next few years and overlooking and penciling in who's quarterback next year and stuff like that. This isn't a next season Tennessee, which it's always been. I think there's a lot of seniors in this locker room. There's a lot of seniority that's going to step up and say, "Hey, man, this class still can be special. If we close out and we win these final 2 games, they're going to be talking about us. Maybe not in the college football playoff realm, but they're still gonna help. They help build this program to where it's at now."
Yeah, well, one program that's building up, Shane, is the Missouri Tigers. Shane's 10-win club here, and man, a lot on the line here. Coming off a big win, Florida's still they're fighting for their bowl lives. Don't win this one, you're down to a must win against Florida State in the season finale at home. But Mizzou, you got to keep that momentum.
Yeah.
They're in the New Year's 6 picture now, but they can't afford a loss. Thoughts on Mizzou, Shane? Eli, Cody Schrader, the self-made man. I like those comments, and they've turned it into a home field advantage now. When we did our home field advantage rankings in the offseason, very low on the list.
Yeah,
they're moving up. I think fifth consecutive sellout. If they've sold this one out, I apologize if I missed that. I know it was 4 last week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they've sold this one out too. So 5 sellouts in a row. The only home game they lost is LSU, and that went down to the wire.
Right.
What do you think? You think Drinking Company can make us an elite home field advantage like that? He said that was clearly one of the goals.
One of our, I've referred to this a few times, but our core value, always compete to do it better than it's been done before, is each year we kind of pick a few things like, what have we not accomplished here before, and let's shoot for that as a goal. And it's been, hey, let's consistently sell out Faroe. Let's make Faroe a home field advantage. Let's do, let's get that, you call it field storming game win, and we've been able to do those things so far this year. And some of these freshmen, like KD and JC and Enos and Harrison, their first experience at Faroe was COVID. So we were always in a 20,000 capacity crowd, and then the next year, we didn't have quite the success that we needed to early in the year to really engage the fan base. And even last year, I think about Georgia was an awesome environment, but it wasn't a sellout. And now we've got those sellouts and that streak going. So I think it's been pretty cool that they've built it to what it is now.
I think so. I really do. But you got to be careful, because there's a lot of backpatting going on. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of looking in the rearview mirror and talking about how great Schrader was last week, and how great the home field was last week, and how great the win over Tennessee was last week. You get caught looking back, you miss what's coming up on you. And, that's you want to talk about Tennessee, that's exactly what they did when they went down to Florida and got curb stomped. You know what I'm saying? So you can't take your foot off the gas. This is a program, say what you want, kind of went toe-to-toe with LSU as well, and has an opportunity to derail everything, and deflate the balloon. You're on cloud 9 right now, but you are not at the top of that mountain. To get a 10-win season, you got to stay dialed in, and it's that whole cliche, 1 week at a time. They've got to get back on it. It's you're listening to this, and it's going to be Thursday, and they're still talking about the damn Tennessee game.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because Florida will beat you if you're not careful.
It's much easier to be the hunter than the hunted.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Mizzou's going to find out at the end. With Florida and Arkansas, they're going to be favored, and these are 2 teams that don't like each other. Florida and Arkansas, they don't like Mizzou. So I think a lot on the line, and they got something to prove even this week to me. But the other side, Shade, they've really got something to prove here. Billy Napier lost 3 4-star commits since Saturday's loss. And I don't think it's because they lost to LSU, but clearly these guys were, and when one of them to Georgia, one of them will flip to Georgia, so that makes it double painful here. But man, things are rocky right now. We'll get to the questions here. We even got some people questioning his job. But let's kick it over to Billy real quick. He's asked about the timeline for this thing, and just the expectations and all this. But these are not the questions you want as a year two coach. It's supposed to be positive. It's supposed to be building, and it kind of seems like the media is wondering when's this gonna kick off here, Billy?
To that, you've gotten resources commitment clearly. What's your confidence in the time commitment with Florida? I mean, you're in the middle of it. Do you feel confident in the timeline?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think we knew it wasn't going to be easy, and look, I think you have to go into it. I mean, you develop a skill set. You're equipped. These same things I'm talking about relative to our players. I can tell you, I wouldn't be up here without going through a lot of tough stuff to some degree, right? So you're equipped with faith. You're equipped with discipline. Your ability to come up with solutions. And you got to be tough-minded. You got to have endurance. You got to be able to persevere. You got to surround yourself with really good people. And I think ultimately, it's not like you thought we're going to run the table the first year. And, it's just, it is what it is, right? So I think we have to continue to be action-oriented, solution-oriented. And I do believe in what we do and how we do it. I think there's always adjustments that are required. But we have tremendous leadership here, top down. We have great resources. We have a tremendous product to sell. This place has done it before, and I'm firmly confident that we're capable of doing it again.
Really, has the portal changed, do you think, the patience that schools have with their coaches because there's so many players coming and going? And how does that change perspectives, do you think, on patience with coaches?
I think it's just more coverage, right? It's more drama. I think it's just another element to strategy, right? Relative to what you're going to do. I think, and it's new, right? So there's not a huge sample size of evidence relative to what works and what doesn't work. I do think that, our game continues to evolve, and it's important that you keep up. I think there's an element to that, but ultimately we've got conviction about how we do it. We're going to do, I think it's much like the National Football League. In my opinion, you're talking about you want to build your team through the draft, and you want to, each offseason, you're evaluating the depth on your team, the impact players, where do you need immediate presence, and that's the NFL free agency model, right? So I think we're living in a world that's very much the same, so you throw NIL into that equation, and now you're living in a salary cap model, right? The problem is we have no contracts. Our drafted players have no contracts. I'd like to know that we had them for 4 or 5 years. So the instability, I think is magnified, and I think that since when have college fan bases been patient? Okay, that's what I'd like to know, right? So, everywhere I've been, the fan base is impatient in my life, and I've got 2 brothers that are high school coaches. My dad coached high school football.
All right, Shay. So, again, fair or not, I don't know, but these questions coming at Billy, and as we're kind of skidding for the second year in a row to end the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're asking the tough questions because the tough questions need to be asked. And I know, patience is a virtue, but it's not in college football. And, even the analogy of the NFL, going into a year 3, there should be optimism. You know, what's the optimism for Florida Gators right now? You know, your quarterback's not going to be there. Probably your running backs, I'd imagine maybe, you know, one of them. Is that right?
I think ETN will be back.
ETN's going to be back, but is Johnson, you know?
I mean, he could, but I think he'll probably go pro if he gets a good grade.
Has an opportunity, you know. So what does this wide receiver room look like? Was it, you know, this? So it's one thing to say, okay, hey, we're building something, but what are we looking at year 3? Are we going into year 3 saying, okay, finally we made it? You know, this is the year that this class takes over, and all of a sudden Florida's just this dominant force that they've always been. And I think that's where I have the hesitation, because you can hang your hat on a recruiting class, but a recruiting class isn't going to fix your problem next year. Transfer portal will, you know, if you can go out there and get that, but do we have a large track record of Billy just nailing it in the transfer portal? You know, so I don't know. I'm up and down here. Florida, I'm piling on you a little bit right now, because you're at the tail end of the season. You don't have a secured bowl game, and then you're up here saying the same old bullshit about, hey, being patient and blah blah blah, whatever. You know, year 3, I have no optimism right now for the Florida Gators.
Yeah, I'd argue if I could, but that's kind of where I'm at too. You know what? All right. What about this final one? I mean, I think there's some real bad blood that neither one will kind of admit to it.
Can I, on the Missouri one, just if we could go back on that one? Missouri has an opportunity for something very special, something that's not been done there ever that I can remember. You know, they have an opportunity to not just close out a 10-win season, but do it in a deciding fact. I mean, they have an opportunity to blow the doors off these next 2 games.
They're top 10 right now.
I'm telling you, they're right there. And I'm even getting DMs, and I'm sorry, I won't mention who you are, but they got the scenario on how they can still get into the college football playoffs with all the stars lining up. You know, that's the optimism I want looking ahead. You know, so I got onto them a little bit early, but, you know, and Coach, they all listen to this show. They know they're big boys. And they've all put out the Cody Schrader tweets, and all the DMs and stuff have been fantastic. But to win a Heisman, you got to keep winning and go out there, build off what we did last week, and finish this season strong. If this is a top ball game, nobody's going to be talking about Cody Schrader at the end of the game or at the end of the season.
If they beat Napier, will Eli troll Billy like he
rightfully
did
so?
Josh
Yeah,
Heupel?
maybe not to the I love the Dan Mullen that you mentioned. You know, that was good. I'm not saying it can't fire back up, but no, but the Florida Gators it reminds me of that deer on what is it That's that Chris Farley movie where they hit that deer and they put it in the back, you know? It's like, just put it down and all of a sudden it just comes back alive, you know, and it creates havoc. That's kind of what Florida Gators are. It's like you can go ahead and put it down and not have to worry about it. Or if not, you can be going 60 miles an hour and that damn thing's going to come back alive.
Tommy Boy, classic.
Tommy Boy, yeah.
Yeah. All right, how about I think there's some bad blood here, Shane. They won't admit it. Kentucky, South Carolina. I mean, this is the other SEC matchup.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Stoops, not exactly the same as Napier, but he's getting asked, you know, Mizzou's building, South Carolina building. Does that hurt you? They hate all the South Carolina hype and all this bullshit. And he was asked specifically about Shane Beamer. I don't know where you got that. I don't know where you're getting that.
Who the hell are you talking to?
Let's kick
Ain't
it
my
off.
friend. Ain't my friend.
Mark, a lot of coaches don't like coaching against their friends. Rumor has it, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that the relationship you have with Coach Beamer, there's a little bit of an edge to it. Does that add any additional spice to
I have no idea where you would get that information from. I have no clue where that would come. I don't feel that way. Maybe he does. I don't know. You have to ask him. But I don't feel that at all. It's another game, and we need it for our university, for our players. There's zero to do with me and Shane.
There's still a lot. Mark, over the past couple of years, you've had your fair share of victories against programs like Missouri and South Carolina, and yet it seems like this year the success of those programs is what your critics use as a primary ammunition against you and your program. Is that fair in your mind?
It doesn't. You know, that I don't. don't take this the wrong way. I mean, I don't care. I spend zero time thinking about that at all. I mean, zero. I mean, Eli and I are friends. I talked to him, and I mean, look, last year he was enduring a lot more pressure than I'm enduring right now, right? I mean, he was getting a lot, and he's having a heck of a year. And now I'm picking his brain. Hey, man, what are you doing? What, you know what I mean? What's going on? Because we don't play him next year, so, he's done a heck of a job. And, all of us are built that way. I mean, we're not, I can't speak for everybody, but I mean, if you're successful in this league and hang around for a while, you're going to have thick skin. You're going to take it, that's why I never get too excited. I mean, have you ever seen me really, really excited after a win? I know it's about 7 days till I get a dart thrown right back in the middle of my chest. So, I mean, that's why I don't get overly, I get excited. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited for my players. I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the coaches. But I don't ever get too high and I don't ever get too low.
All right. So, I mean, this sounds to me like a man who don't want to admit he don't like the other guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll hear Beamer here in a minute, but I feel like Mark hates Beamer more than Beamer hates Mark. I don't know if you're kind of picking up on that, but this game's got a little extra mustard to it. And it has the last 2 years. And even last year, it felt a little, I mean, it wasn't, Will Levis was out, so there was a whole bunch of other factors floating around this thing. But I think that kicking him while he was down has just kind of amplified this one as well. So I'm pumped up about this game. I think this may potentially be the best game of Saturday.
Yeah, and so here's Beamer on how competitive and physical this game always is, and he's even asked about the sunglasses, Shane.
Hey, Shane, the last 2 years versus Kentucky has been a pretty competitive game. How important is this game? And especially, there's a lot going into this game, and also you got to stay focused because you know who you got next week.
Yeah, we're not thinking about anything beyond this week. We got enough on our plate with Kentucky. No, it's just the way the game is. I mean, I just know in my 2 years here, 2 years ago it was 16-10 and was a slugfest for 4 quarters, and last year was 24-14, and we had a huge turnover on the first play of the game and a blocked punt. So I think our players understand, like, when you play Kentucky, that's who they are, and it's going to be a physical 4-quarter war. And offense, defense, and special teams, all 3 phases, are going to be equally critical this week, like they always are, but especially against these guys, and they have our utmost respect.
I've got another hard-hitting question for you.
Talk to me.
Can you confirm or deny whether or not you'll bring some sunglasses with you to the stadium on Saturday?
I think my son has those glasses, so I got to ask him if he has them as well. I will not be bringing them, though. Now, we need to play well, and again, that was fun last year and all that as well, but last year was last year, and 2 new teams, but two good teams going at it on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something there important, Shane, but I really think, these outside of these fan bases, not a lot of people will be paying attention. Well, they may because the games are so weak on Saturday, but I think the loser of this game is going to face some intense criticism.
Yeah.
Because Kentucky has owned South Carolina up until last year, and their quarterback obviously wasn't, so that's what they say. But that's a valid, it's damn hard to win without your starting quarterback. So that I think Kentucky needs this because they don't want to. It's all about staying ahead of. I know the East is going away, but it's that's why I thought like Tennessee losing to Florida was bad because Heupel's in year 3, Napier's in year 2. Now that didn't sustain itself, but you always want to have your program ahead of the up and comers, so to speak. So it's important for Kentucky. On the same end, South Carolina, obviously, bowl hopes, home game, night game.
Yeah.
You're losing these. Again, I'm not saying put Beamer on the hot seat, but fans are going to be like, by God, we can't beat this Kentucky team at home, at night, late in the season. I think there's going to be some very, very tough questions for the losing coach of this game.
Yeah, and maybe that's where we're at with both of them because I think both of them potentially could be looking ahead. You got Clemson and Louisville. Those are 2 big games all of a sudden. And, you got South Carolina still fighting for that damn bowl opportunity. I mean, they can't lose. Cannot lose. But I don't know. This just seems like this is a little bit I don't know, it kind of feels like Missouri, Tennessee. The coaches kind of pissed at each other and doing little things back and forth, and I expect a little bit of that on the field. You know, they're not going to hold back anything in this game. So, but there's a lot of pressure because, like you said, both of these fan bases are expecting to win. They're not worried about this week. They're worried about Clemson or they're worried about Louisville because they beat Kentucky just like they did last year. And Kentucky saying the same. There's no reason we should have lost last year. We're definitely going to kick their ass. We're favored this week, you know. Right. So I think that's kind of where we're at as a fan base. And if you drop it, then you're naturally going to be disappointed.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a break from the show, Shane, to remind the audience we're brought to you by MyBookie. Head on over to mybookie.ag today. Put in that promo code THAT, SEC, over at MyBookie online sportsbook, and they're willing to give you a $200 cash bonus today to ride with the professor, fade my picks. Can't wait. There's a... Damn it, I don't know how to make a joke out of that. But trust us.
You bunch of clowns. Your noses.
Head on over to MyBookie today. MyBookie.ag today. Put in that promo code. That SEC is the #1 way to help the show this football season. But we really, really would appreciate it. Now back to the show. All right, let's get into some mailbag questions. How's that sound?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, how about Steve on Twitter, Shane? How likely is it that Jimbo or Bobby Petrino are the next Arkansas coach? And first of all, I just got to say, we got to stop hyping up Jimbo. I mean, we've never hyped him up in the last 4 years, but no, he's awful.
Yeah.
And if you're hiring Jimbo, you might as well keep Sam Pittman because I think Sam Pittman's just as good as Jimbo.
Yeah. I think Jimbo at least takes a year off. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Right.
I think just kind of getting your name out of the headlines is not a bad deal. Now, Bobby Petrino's interesting. One of the funniest videos I saw was a cartoon of somebody trying to sneak back into UNLV down there, you know, see if his job's still open. But I think Petrino lands a job, not a head coaching job, not in the SEC. But if this project would have worked, that was the most interesting hire in this offseason because I do think that it could have been a launch pad to a team like Mississippi State or something like that. But unfortunately, since the project failed, he's going to have to reboot somewhere else.
All right, how about Jay Mosley on Instagram, Shane? Will Florida make a bowl game? Mm-hmm. And if so, are they more likely to win at Mizzou or at home against Florida State?
Right now, I say no. And I say no, let's say 75%. And so that gives you 25% shot there. I would say your closest bet out of the two is Missouri right now.
Yeah.
Because of what I said earlier, them looking behind and not ahead of. I mean, you have an opportunity there. You're playing good ball. I'm not saying Florida's playing bad ball because they're not. They're just playing it against the wrong teams. You know, if they were playing earlier, they did this against Arkansas like they played last week, they've already had the bowl game locked.
And I think, to your point, what's killing them is their defense, and that's the strong part of Mizzou.
Yeah.
And the offense, obviously. And then I think Florida State, too, with their quarterback and their receivers. There's just awful matchups.
Yeah. Florida State, I mean, they're
gonna look back at that Arkansas game
for sure
as we blew it. You know,
absolutely.
All right, and then
and look what the quarterback did. You know, you thought Jaden Daniels ran all over you. Part 2's coming. You know, so
yeah.
In the next 2 weeks, if you hate mobile quarterbacks, you're going to hate the next 2 games.
And on the other end of the spectrum, Shade, Michael Riley on YouTube.
Yeah,
he's also a Gator fan. He's called in. He was the guy that called in from the wedding.
Yeah.
Profanities galore. If Florida loses out and they drop out of the top 10 in recruiting, does Billy stay for another year? So I mean that's on the other end of the spectrum. But I think even if they lose out and they drop out of the top 10 in recruiting, I still think he's coming back.
Yeah,
I think there's a 90% chance to 95, unless unless they lose by like 40 points this weekend and 40 points to Florida State.
I think it's the fashion that they lose if they lose. But yeah, I'm kind of with you here. It seems like year 3 is like that magical number.
Right.
Like if you don't figure it out by then, I'd be interested to look at his contract and see how that plays out. So I'm sure there's some buyout stuff there.
How about @Wardy on Instagram, Shane? Is Mark Stoops the Kentucky version of Gus Malzahn? Can get you to 8 wins or so, but never the big ones.
It's so funny. Jimbo Fisher had the highest buyout. The second one was Gus Malzahn, and they're talking about bringing him back. It's like, the short-term memory loss. No, I don't. I think Gus inherited a great program and squandered it, and I don't think you could say the same about Mark.
Yeah, and he was kind of like a flash in the pan. I mean, that's maybe not fair because they were somewhat consistent, but not consistent. I mean, they were wildly inconsistent from 1 year to another. Low expectations, they'd be really good. High expectations, they'd be really bad. At least Mark Stoops, he's getting you 7 wins minimum every year at Kentucky, which should not, considering how strong the SEC is, that should not be looked down upon. And I know I give him a hard time, but hell, we're Tennessee guys. We know you fire, your long-standing coach who's consistent.
Yeah.
That the grass ain't always greener, and Florida's found that out.
Yeah.
I mean, many of these programs, LSU is,
and this is a quarterback league, and look what Gus did with quarterbacks. I mean, none of them were his that were good, and then the one that went to Oregon to be good. So it's like, you have to have, and Mark, it seems like he's been able to find more out of less. And I think that's why people are so high on him, and myself included. So,
yep.
Yeah.
How about Go Hogs 92, Shane? Big fan of the show on YouTube. Is Sam Pittman coaching for his job, or has the decision already been made behind the scenes? And I would be, I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get let go on Sunday. Not that I wanted that to happen, but just the way Saturday went down. But I think Hunter Yurachek is a good enough AD to know if you've already made the decision, you got to just make it.
Yeah.
So I don't think the decision has been made. Now that doesn't mean Sam Pittman's coming back, but I think they're going to let this play out. See how it goes Saturday. See how it goes against Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't think it's looking good for him, but if he can pull an upset here, I think Sam Pittman's coming back.
Yeah, I think it's a different approach, man, and maybe a little bit of a dead man walking scenario here. I think FIU obviously dropping that one would escalate things, but I truly think that after the Missouri game is when we're going to hear the bad news, and so I mean that's the nature of this game, Mike. And I may be wrong, and they may give him another, like you said, another year. And we may look back and say he was a great, he was damn close, but I don't know. I don't got good feelings about this one.
All right, how about Trey Tucker on Twitter? Shane, he asks great questions every week. Bigger coaching mistake, hiring Dan Enos or Zach Arnett trying to switch up from the air raid? I think it's hiring Dan Enos. Because we said this many times, but Zach Arnett switching from the air raid, it looks disastrous now because it clearly is not working what they're doing. But as good as Mike Leach was, I mean, it was the defense that's been holding Mississippi State together his final season. I mean, the offense was not good.
Right.
Now, they had personnel that fit it, so maybe it was a mistake to go away from it, but I think the bigger mistake was hiring Dan Enos.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, yeah, I felt like that was going to be a good handoff, a good relationship between KJ and, at the start Rocket. Now, I know he was banged up and everything, but again, it felt like you had all these cool toys and you just didn't do it right. You couldn't put the puzzle together. And so we're talking about Sam potentially losing his job because of that hire.
Right.
I think you can argue that Zach he lost his job when he got his job because he was not, I think he was short term anyway. It just escalated because of incompetence.
And the defense fell apart too.
The strong suit, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? Which is part of the reason we get on to Sam so much, because why does the offensive line suck if the best coach is there? So,
well, and Trey always asks a second part.
Of course he
that
does.
are always fun. You'll like this one. Will you and cousin Shane share a Thanksgiving meal, and who in the family will put away the most food?
Do you really need to ask that question? I love Thanksgiving. We'll talk about our family meal probably next week, but I'm looking forward to it. You know, I was joking because they putting all these Christmas trees up, and it's like, damn, we ain't even going to celebrate Thanksgiving yet.
Right.
Then we'll get them trees up.
I've already pre-ordered like a catered meal.
Yeah.
And this is not even the full spread that we'll have. Take a wild guess how much I spent on just the food items that I got for a Thanksgiving.
$100,
$250. Because it means that much to me, and I want good food. You know, and I don't want to have to cook it. You know what I mean?
Well, you do it all, and it's all week long. you
Right,
know?
right.
I'm Googling on day 5. How good's turkey in the fridge, you know?
All right, last one. I really like this one from Jeff Rawlings on Twitter. What are you going to miss the most about SEC on CBS? Remember, I was humming the tune before we started. And what's your favorite memorable game called? From Gary and Brad.
Well, I'll start backwards. Memorable game was the Hail Mary in Georgia. That was a big Tennessee Georgia game.
It's a tough one to tell.
That one it's hard to explain, but there was a ride up to that point. You know, this wasn't Tennessee's first come from behind victory, and that game in particular, you know, Tennessee thought they had it, then Georgia does their own version of a Hail Mary with Eason, and then you're like, well, it's over, you know. Then all of a sudden, 2 plays later, we're back down there throwing a Hail Mary to Juwan Jennings. So that will forever be my game. And I've watched a lot of great games. But the thing I'll miss most about CBS is the music.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy.
That's what I was going to say.
Just that jingle it is college football. It is SEC football. It is the game of the week. So that's going to take some getting used to is switching over, you know.
Yeah, and this wasn't Gary and Brad, but the kick six, the prayer at Jordan Hare, those were both CBS ones. I'm pretty sure those stand out to me. But if we're going Gary and Brad, I think you nailed it with Tennessee Georgia 2016. But close second, I really like that 2019 LSU Alabama. It felt like a national championship game in November.
Yeah.
President Trump was there. I mean, it was a spectacle of spectacles, you know, and it was just that was a hell of a
Did you hear
matchup.
He's coming to South Carolina game?
Clemson, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's true, but I think so.
Yeah, that's what the rumors are.
Dabo's finale.
The
Who
game just
knows?
got a little bit more interesting.
Well, speaking of interesting, Shay, let's kick it over to this interview. Karels, GigEm 247, talk Jimbo Fisher getting fired, and the search there at Texas A&M. All right, so hey, for the first time, we got Karels from GigEm 247, of course, obviously part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Carter, I was on your show about a week or two ago, and you were making a case for why Jimbo may return, and I was like, you got to get rid of this guy. Thankfully, they made the right decision. Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I'm with you. It was the right decision for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, no surprise whatsoever, I would imagine. I know I listened to one of your recent podcasts where you broke it down. I guess maybe the timing more than anything, but would there have been a revolt among the 12th man had Jimbo come back for another year?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so many people were out on him. And I mean, going into the season, there was already a lot of skepticism among the fan base. And since that Miami loss, it really just started to go downhill. Then you lost these, you know, all these one-score games to Bama and Ole Miss and Tennessee. Like Ross Bjork said, the athletic director at A&M, this program was stuck in neutral. It didn't really seem like this was going to go back in a great direction. And really ever since the 2021 season, it started to kind of spiral downward, and it felt like there was no recovering. And yeah, I just the biggest thing is the underutilization of talent, underachievement. You have one of the more talented rosters in the country, and you're losing to Ole Miss, you're losing to Tennessee, you're going 8-4. 5 of the 6 seasons that he was at A&M, you had 4+ losses. And when you're paying someone that much, and when you have the talent that they have and all the resources, that's just not good enough. So it made sense, and it really there was no reason to believe that it was going to get better.
Yeah, it really hit home for me, Carter, when I was I'm trying to think. It was Tennessee week where A&M came to Tennessee, and I was on Feinbaum, and I was just trolling Jimbo the whole time, and there was a bunch of Aggies there. They were agreeing with me. I was like, all right, this guy's in trouble. So let me ask you this, right? Because I know I want to ask you about the job in just a second, but has the Jimbo Fisher era, has that lowered the expectations at all for the next coach? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. And on one hand, a little bit, just because you're going to be paying this guy $7.2 million every year until 2031. You're also going to be paying him the initial about $19 million here within the next 60 days. So, that's not going to allow you to just buy the next coach and get $10 million a year guaranteed and get whatever coach you want. That's just not going to happen, most likely, at least. And so expectation wise, I think the thought of like a home run hire, getting like a Dan Lanning type, it's just that could be really difficult to achieve here. As far as just expectations from a general standpoint, though, there's this kind of narrative of like, oh, A&M should know its place. They haven't won since 1939. They've had a lot of, I think 1 10-win season since 1999, I want to say. They shouldn't expect this. And I just push back against that. First of all, A&M has been a much different program since Johnny Manziel was on campus. Where they are now is a completely different athletic department, in 1986. So trying to make a comparison there, I just don't think that's fair. And then also, just look at it. Every year, they're top 2. It's like them in Texas as far as how much, revenue they bring in. Their donors are, $76.8 million buyout. That speaks enough volumes. So I'm just saying, man, like when you have this money, these resources, when you're an hour and a half from Houston, one of the hottest recruiting beds in the country, how can you not say, yeah, this should be, a college football playoff contender every year? That should be the expectation. There's some people that act like A&M is Syracuse or something, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, this program has so much that other programs do not.
Right. So you may have kind of already answered this, but can you make the case for why Texas A&M is an elite job? And when I say elite, I'm saying, hovering in the top 10 to top 15 range with potential to be even better. And in a next season when we move into the 12-team playoff format, not that the expectation is every year, because I think short of 2 or 3 programs, I don't think it's realistic to make the playoff every year, but to at least be in the conversation come November, to be in the 12-team discussion. Do you believe that's where Texas A&M should be?
Absolutely. First of all, Jimbo Fisher did give a little bit of a blueprint as far as you can recruit a number 1 class here in the country. You can get top 5 classes every single year. It's not like you're struggling to recruit here. And then you can also be one of the highest paid coaches in the country. You could also have a crazy buyout if things go your direction. So, and what are the most important things in college football? It's money and acquiring talent. And at A&M, you can do both. And then facilities-wise, there are not a lot of places that are as great as Kyle Field. $500 million renovation. You can seat 110,000 fans in there. I know A&M fans were trolling Oregon the other day because they were bragging about how they had 55,000 fans against Utah. And they're like, really? That's it? That's about half of what we got. So, that you don't get all those things at a lot of other places. And so if you can get the talent, you have the money, you have the facilities, why not? Why can't you be? It's just, SEC, it's so dang hard to do it year in and year out. So until there's a proof of concept, I understand why people are skeptical. And that's why they need to make this hire right, because, man, they got to figure it out. Like, it's been taking way too long. I know Georgia fans had to feel similarly before they had their big run of like, how is this not happening? And I think that's where A&M is at a little bit right now.
Yeah. Are you anticipating a mass exodus of any of the players via the portal? And I know A&M's had a pretty strong recruiting class. But do you anticipate them being able to hold that together? Is Ross Bjork and the current staff, I have to imagine they're working overtime to kind of keep this thing together.
Yeah, I think that was one benefit of making the firing now is instead of kind of blindsiding them after the season and, boom, the portal opens, you can kind of have time. Now, I know they can enter the portal now, but they do have time to kind of, recalibrate and figure things out. This is Abilene Christian this week, so it's kind of like a bye week where they can kind of have these discussions. Elijah Robinson, the interim head coach, said that he hadn't had a lot of discussions with the players yet about leaving. I know they have one guy in the transfer portal, a true freshman receiver, Raymond Cottrell, and they haven't lost any commits since the firing. So far it's been good. Now, are there going to be people who leave? Absolutely. There will be every year. But I do think it's a little too early to tell at this point, especially because these kids don't know who their coach will be yet. And so, I think another important thing will be Elijah Robinson, this interim head coach. It was a really important thing for A&M to promote this guy because he's the most beloved coach on this staff. He's the best recruiter on the staff. He's kind of like the Brian Hartline of Texas A&M. So if he can be retained, I think that could be really important to keeping a Walter Nolan and keeping a Shamar Stewart, those kind of guys. He's a associate head coach, co-defensive coordinator, so he's also just close with a lot of players on the team on both sides of the ball. So I'm curious to see if he's retained because I do think that would help them retain a lot of their guys.
Any shot at all, or maybe this is too premature to even ask, but any chance that he is named the next head coach if, obviously they'd have to win big over Abilene and pull an upset on the road at LSU, but maybe this is a wrong time to make these examples, but we have seen similar, Coach O won a national championship, Beamer, he's kind of that model at South Carolina, Pittman at Arkansas. People have had success with a more CEO recruiter type head coach. I know that's probably not the name anyone's wanting at this point in time, but is there any shot that maybe A&M goes that way and maybe they land like two outstanding coordinators to pair with them?
It's funny, after his press conference on Monday, all these A&M fans were like, man, maybe we should take a look at him because he is an impressive guy who is personable and just really big on relationships. Players love him. I remember back when Notre Dame elevated Marcus Freeman, a lot of the reason was because he was so beloved by the players there. I'm not going to rule anything out, but I don't think it's going to happen just because I think just from what I've heard so far, A&M is really focused on getting a current head coach. That is kind of the idea. I think they want somebody, they always say when you break up with your girlfriend, you're always looking for the opposite of who she is. Maybe if you're dating a blonde, the next one will be a brunette. So I think with Jimbo, it's kind of like, okay, we want someone who has a more disciplined program and has experience kind of doing that. We want to have somebody who, coaches special teams and has a special teams coach instead of not having one under Fisher. And so, all these little different things, being more aggressive, right? But from what we've heard so far, it has been, hey, a head coach, someone who has experience doing it. I think that the program is in a bit of not a crisis mode, but they need stability. They need somebody that can reassure guys that hey, we could still turn this around pretty quickly. We still got all the pieces to, make this a great program in 2024 and beyond. So they do need somebody who has experience in the proof of concept and has done that.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Carter, but I don't have experience breaking up with girlfriends. They always break up with me, but that's another conversation for another day. How about, I always think it's silly with, you see the hot board, and I understand, this has to be done because this is what fans want. They love these names thrown out there, but it's almost never these early names that people mention and say, they'd be a good fit, or Dan Lanning, like you said. I mean, Lane Kiffin, what have you. But let's just live in a fantasy world here where Ross Bjork calls you up, Carter. Who is the perfect hire that is a realistic candidate for Texas A&M? And it could be anybody. It could be an NFL coach, could be an assistant, G5. I don't really care. But who do you think would be the perfect hire to get A&M where they need to get?
Okay, I'm going to give you two different ones. One, I'm a little biased here because I used to cover his program at Florida State. Mike Norvell, I covered them last year before I got here. I was just highly impressed with the guy. He has everything you'd want. I mean, I think he might have a future as an NFL head coach one day. I think he's a top 5 head coach in the game. I know they pay him about $6 or $7 million a year, so I don't know if he's quite attainable for him. I don't know if he'd want to leave there. He's in the middle of a playoff run, so logistics of it don't make sense. But the biggest thing with him that I was impressed by was just his culture and his discipline and how, they didn't have – I don't think in his time there they've had a player who's gotten arrested. I don't think they've, had many guys just leave the portal in the last couple of years. They've been so good at the portal too. That's been their big thing. Last year, 10 of their players were all ACC, were transfers, 10 of them. So under Jimbo Fisher, what did he lack? Didn't do the transfer portal, didn't have a very disciplined team, was very conservative, archaic offense. Mike Norvell's he's the different girlfriend that I've been mentioning. And I just think he knows how to put a staff together. He's won at multiple spots, Memphis as well. And he's from Texas. He is from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I know he still has a brother who lives there. His wife has family in Arkansas. So he has experience in the area. He obviously has recruiting ties to the South. The other guy, and this is a total long shot, and I don't know how it would work. I just think it's the home run that A&M fans could think about is Dan Campbell, because, again, I don't see it happening. I still think A&M wants to have a college head coach who has experience doing that. But Dan Campbell played tight end for Texas A&M. He's an Aggie through and through. He's from Glen Rose, Texas, loves this school, loves this program. And, you watch him on the Lions, and he is just like the most beloved head coach that the NFL's had in forever. So he would be the most loved A&M coach ever, like no question about it. Unless he goes 8-5, but I think he'd be the most loved coach ever, and that's the reason why he'd be the other guy I'd mentioned.
Yeah, he'd be great for content. You know what? So let me. I was just curious. What's your thoughts on the fans over there at GigEm 247? What are they more interested in? A big name, or do they want like a rising, maybe the next breakout star? What's your read on just what your listeners, what kind of candidate they're more interested in?
Man, these guys are so just want everything, and it's so hard to please them. They hate everything about everyone, but the two big names we've heard all along has been Mike Elko at Duke and Jeff Traylor at UTSA. I'm not going to call it a 2-horse race so far. I think there's still a lot to play out. Some other names that are being floated around, but with both of those guys, A&M fans are like, could do better than that. Duke head coach, UTSA head coach, could do better. People love Dan Lanning. Kalen DeBoer at Washington was someone that a lot of fans have been talking about. Lynn Schumann at Georgia was someone people were talking about. But I just don't know if those guys are going to happen. I mean, we saw Dan Lanning's press conference. That was about as emphatic of a response as you're going to see declining, a job opportunity this day and age. But yeah, they've been pretty picky. These candidates that kind of make sense, but just aren't God's gift to this earth yet. They're kind of picky about them. And I get it. I mean, they're just so nervous that they want things to go right after what they've experienced the last couple of years. But hey, I think there's a lot to like in both of those guys, and I don't know if they'd be that bad for A&M.
I'm just thankful you didn't say Urban Meyer, because
No.
Let's not sell our souls here for a championship. You know what?
No. Everyone, there's like one poster every day that either says Urban Meyer or Deion Sanders, and I just have to be like, no, dude, put the drink down, chill out. Like, that is not happening, and A&M would not want that to happen.
All right, final thing for you, Carter. Really appreciate your time. But can you give us just an educated guess on a timeline for a hire? I almost have to imagine they made the decision to fire Jimbo when they did so that they can get a coach in here for recruiting. And obviously what's so important now is the transfer portal window. Do you anticipate we will have a head coach at A&M by, and I apologize, I don't know the timeline. Is it December 1, December 4th, something like that? Whenever the portal opens, will A&M have a coach, do you think?
December 4th is when it opens, a 30-day period. I believe they will have one before then. The LSU game, what is that, the 25th? So I think it'll be after the LSU game and before that December 4th period. That's kind of the timeline that I'm hearing so far.
Right, yeah, because you just set yourself back so far. I mean, we're worried about this roster potentially getting ravaged. It will if there's no direction and there's no coach in there. So I hope for your sake, I'm a Tennessee grad. We've had a couple where we've had about 8 candidates pass on a job. I'm hoping for your sake that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's going to be a crazy next few weeks. Teams are already have been kind of circling this A&M roster like sharks illegally, looking through like, hey, is this guy interested in leaving? And so I think it is very critical that A&M makes the right hire, not just for the long-term future, but the short-term of retaining this roster. Because, look, next season, you don't play Georgia, you don't play Bama. Your 3 biggest games, Texas, LSU, and Notre Dame, are all at home. And then you got the 12-team playoffs. So if you make the right hire, we've seen this before, Josh Heupel at Tennessee, right? You get that hire right, you can win 11 games next year or 10 games even and make the playoffs. So, I think A&M has a real chance here to make a splash that will make an immediate impact.
Yeah. Well, hey, Carter, I really appreciate your time. Before you go, can you tell my audience, how can they follow you? How can they find your work?
Yes, sir. GigEm247.com is where you can find our work. And then at Carter Karels, it's a weird spelling, Karels. People like to say Karels, but it's Karels, and that's where you find me on X. I keep saying Twitter, and I don't know what I'm supposed to call it now, but I'll just say X.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate you, Carter, for joining the show for the first time. It was an outstanding interview, and yeah, man, this was a loaded show.
Yeah.
Great one here. Finished strong going into we're not quite to the weekend yet, but one more show, and then it'll be a live show, kind of, sort of. You want to tell the audience what's up with that?
I've got some stuff. I got a thing going on, and I won't elaborate. I'll be all right, but unfortunately, I won't be able to do the live show tomorrow, so I'm going to go ahead and get our picks in.
Mm-hmm.
They're dynamite. They're loaded, so you're going to love that. Professor Shane's on a heater here, and again, I won't be able to join you, quote unquote, live, but for the listeners at home, this will come out Friday as normal. My picks against Mike's picks, so we got some good stuff.
Well, actually, your picks will be live because I'll be going live Thursday, 7:00, as usual. But you'll be there in spirit.
In spirit, yeah.
Yeah. So be on the lookout. It's gonna be something. I'm gonna try.
You know what? Just show up Thursday at 7 on the YouTube channel. If you're not on YouTube, I tell you, we're so close. We're getting close to 20,000, Mike. That's like we wanted by the end of the season to get there. And if you got the YouTube app, just jump on there, that SEC podcast, hit the subscribe button. It means the world to us. And we'd like to get to that number before the end of the season.
Yeah.
And because we plan on doing more stuff. We'll get into more of that in the off season, but we want to do some cool stuff for you guys, more geared toward the video side. And you'll be notified as long as you have your notifications on. So So get on there, hit the subscription button. And if you do that and do your 5-star review, don't forget, screenshot both of those, email it to thatsecpodcast@gmail.com, and you get yourself a beer koozie, man.
Yeah. It's only taken you a couple years, but you nailed that whole thing. Well, buddy, I appreciate you. As always, appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you guys. Go Vols.